Hi. Hi, hello, welcome. We are looking at my top 5 anime of 2018. That is not a typo. We're actually going all the way back to 2018. You may remember I had made several other videos talking about my favorite anime in 2018, but we never actually got to the top 5. And I'll talk a little later in this video about why this took so long, why this video never surfaced, and also why there haven't been any videos at all, period, lately, and kind of what's going to happen going forward. But I think we should just jump right into it. So our number 5 anime of 2018, if you can remember that far back, was Devilman Crybaby. This, I thought, was the director, Yuasa, totally unbound. Um, we He's adapting an absolute classic of manga, Go Nagai's Devilman, which originally ran in, I believe, the 1970s. And I feel like having this sort of jumping off point actually gives him more freedom somehow. That because he can expect some level of familiarity, either with the plot of Devilman specifically, or just kind of this archetypical plot that largely resulted from series like Devilman. He can just go absolutely wild with his own interpretation. And this, I think, really highlights one of the benefits of Netflix funding anime, which is because this never actually aired on Japanese TV, as far as I know, he had absolutely no limitations in what he was able to depict. So this thing is full of sex and violence and nudity and just some of the more outrageous adult depictions that you'll ever see in Japanese animation outside of like hentai and stuff. I don't think you'll ever see something so adult with this level of budgeting and this level of creative freedom. So I still wish though that it was weekly releases. I think this show would have been super hype to watch week by week, but instead the Netflix model, which they so stubbornly insist on sticking to, of dumping the entire run of the series all at once, I think removes a lot of that sense of community and that sense of hype building. So that's kind of disappointing, but it's definitely worth the trade-off. That Yuasa was finally able to just let himself go in every artistic form that he wanted to. There's this wonderful escalation from the early episodes being kind of episodic adventures, introducing characters, building the world, building the lore, to things building up to this gigantic fever pitch of apocalyptic action. It's kind of biblically moralistic in that it has these kind of strong moral lessons, especially in these kind of early episodic adventures where sin is being punished and virtue seems rewarded. And these have like this kind of almost archaic feeling heaviness to them. Not that they're not subtle or full of ambiguities, and later kind of some contradictions and contrasts start emerging, but it reinforces this sense of alienness for them to kind of lay on these moral messages so thickly. And I think the best comparison I can make is like the Bible. When you go back and read the Old Testament and you read these stories of condemnation and salvation, it's just like, this gulf and kind of the gray ambiguity of our real world and the definitiveness of these stories. But as I said, the grayness emerges in this series as well. Some scenes, I'll give a warning here, are really, really brutal. Like, I really don't want to talk about them, not just for spoilers reasons, but because it's genuinely upsetting to remember how brutal some of the scenes are, how sad some of the side plots are. Prepare yourself. If you watch the series, you might have a pretty rough time. It's not going to be for everyone. So if you find yourself kind of repulsed by some of the early developments, if you find yourself kind of ruminating over some unfortunate things that you see happening, just know that it's going to get a lot worse, and that you might think twice about plunging into the insanity. But despite all of that, despite the heavy moralizing, the brutality of the plot, there's this really charming, quirky sense of humor that pervades everything. Like Yuasa's charm in just depicting quirky characters and their eccentric senses of humor things like all the rap scenes and stuff. That it really counterbalances things perfectly. That it ends up being still a very enjoyable watching experience. You never kind of feel like you're grimly subjecting yourself, but you kind of stay upbeat. You kind of stay positively invested. The animation, in accordance with capturing both this brutality and this comedicness, is completely wild. Even more wild than Ping Pong, which is saying a lot. And I think Yuasa is really becoming the master of like every facet of the animation bending to the emotional will of the scene. That the characters will morph and stretch off model, and the settings and backgrounds seem to come alive with the emotions of the characters. And I don't know, this animation style to me is so like cutting edge, so the pinnacle of where anime is going. It's a completely different subject than ping pong, of course. It makes me think that perhaps this kind of animation mode could work for like anything. That like any series could be depicted like this. Actually, there's a show that Yuasa directed airing this season, Keep Your Hands Off Aizoken, that I'm absolutely loving so far. I've only seen the first episode, but I'm completely in love. And again, it's like the same really unbound animation style. A completely different genre again, a completely different cast of characters again, but it just feels so appropriate. So I really think that with each of these iterations, Yuasa is solidifying his career as just one of the directional talents in modern anime. Like, what can't he do at this point? I, I, I look forward to seeing him try to find those limits. Next, we have Comic Girls. This is, as you might expect, just a standard four-girl kind of themed slice of life series. The theme this time is making manga, which I find quite interesting and compelling. And it has sort of a Hidamari sketch appeal. If you know me, you probably know that Hidamari sketch is my favorite anime of all time. I'm a huge, huge fan of it. And anything that just kind of reminds me of it in the slightest, I'm already quite engaged by. I'm already going to be a fan of. Not just in the subject matter, not just in the fact that it's all about people learning to draw well and learning to produce art, and not just the fact that they all live together in one dorm, kind of like the girls in Hidamari live in the one apartment building, but in the freeform editing. This is something that Hidamari, I think, has done better than pretty much any other show I've ever seen, is its creative freedom in how the show is actually edited. If you want to kind of learn what I'm talking about, if you go on my blog, there is nothing like coldwater.blogspot.com, and go to my top anime of all time list. At the very bottom, there's a long, long essay on Hidamari's sketch, where I try to break down exactly how the editing works and why I think it's so genius. And I think the production here is just super top notch in that it kind of captures that freeformness, but actually has quite a high budget. Some of the scenes are gorgeously animated. The character details are super rich. All of the atmosphere is just full of little charm points and love. I was blown away by how high quality the show was. You know, it's just kind of a four coma adaptation. Generally, those they just kind of get the job done, but here they went way above and beyond. There's an adult layer in this series as well. This is something that a few slice of life series do, where not only do we have our central cast of girls that are in high school, but various adults in their life, teachers, here the dorm matron, the editor of one of the girls at the manga magazine she writes for, are all friends as well, and you get to see them hanging out too. I think that's a really fresh twist, and it provides a lot of really good laughs, I think, because they seem more willing to kind of mock the adult characters. So I thought that was cool. But the best part, hands down, by far, is like the motivational aspects. Series that are about kind of the sacrifice and dedication you have to put into a creative project, the struggles and successes and improving your skills and pushing yourself further and further. These sorts of plots are probably my absolute favorite. These sorts of stories are always so compelling to me, so tear-jerking, so beautiful. And Comic Girls, I think, knocks it out of the park. There's a few kind of arcs at the end where it's all about motivating yourself to continue, all about kind of passing the flame of motivation forward to future artists. It's just touches you so deeply. I love it. Actually, though, probably the best part is still the Yuri subplots, and maybe my favorite type of plot is actually about just cute girls doing cute things in cute relationships. So that stuff is really good too. They take it a little more seriously than most of these slice of life type shows. Sometimes it's still played for laughs, but they definitely still want to honor the characters' feelings, which I really appreciate. And can you believe that this is not even my favorite slice of life series from 2018? We'll find out what that one is later. But first, we're going to talk about Sangatsu no Lion. The second part of the second series is all that aired in 2018. So compared to 2017, where there was like a huge run of it, it was hands down my anime of the year. There was only 12 episodes, I think, that aired in 2018 that we'll talk about. But oh my god, they're good. I think it's pretty shocking to me that this is only number 3 on my list. Like, as I said, Sangatsu no Lion was hands down number 1 for 2017. Um, it's a huge resolution. The Hina arc that ended the 2017 run of episodes is finally resolved here. And it's one of the most beautiful and cathartic things I've ever seen in anime. I would just cry continuously through entire episodes. I have no qualms about admitting that. I challenge you to watch it without crying yourself. It's just so beautiful and so affirming and oh my god. But that's only like the first 2 or 3 episodes. We've got so much more too. The White Storm arc is probably the most intensive dive that they've taken into the actual game of shogi, which underlies all of Sangatsu no Lion so far in the series. It's super compelling. It actually made me want to play shogi. If you can remember, on the channel around that time, this would have been the previous channel, I had uploaded some videos of trying to learn how to play shogi. Largely failures, another kind of short-run limited hobby. Maybe I'll try to learn deeper again at some point, but that's just how evocative these episodes were. I like really wanted to see if I could capture any facet of that experience. Soya Meijin, who finally is prominently featured in this arc, is just realized so brilliantly. So Soya Meijin is like the strongest player in the universe of Sangatsu no Lion. And it's always kind of tough when you build a character up like that via reputation, and then you actually have a plot where they need to be depicted consistently and kind of explored deeper. How do you live up to that? Like, how do you both kind of realize that character without losing the mysteriousness and the aura of the reputation? And I think they did a fantastic job here. He's ethereal, but still feels extremely human. And Sangatsu's ability to keep making these characters that kind of operate at both of these levels, where you're so in awe of their capability and the quirks of their personalities are so charming, and yet there's such a depth of humanity that you never doubt that they could be like a real human being with a full and complete 3-dimensional life. Then in the next arc, Burnt Field, they did it again with Saku-chan, a character that up until that point had mostly been kind of comedic relief, sort of commentary, like those old men in the Muppet sketches that would shout from the theater balcony area. That's kind of all I thought Saku-chan's role in Sangatsu would be, but oh my god, in this arc again, you feel the depth of his humanity. You see that there's so much tragedy and beauty in his life. It's an incredibly heavy arc. The themes it deals with are so hugely existential and kind of talk about the scope of your entire life. And yet it's so inspirational at the end. You want to see that field grow again. Oh, it's so good. The bright, happy moments feel so earned because of all of this, because it's so real, because nothing is just glossed over, because the characters will suffer, and you suffer along with them. That when they finally smile, the smile within yourself feels so deep, feels so real and justified. My God, what a beautiful series! How is this only number 3? Will there be any more? This is the sad question we have to ask. Is Shaft kind of over? There's been a major exodus of directors and animation staff from the studio lately. And they don't have really any projects in the pipeline. There's a Madoka spin-off that's airing this season. I haven't started watching it yet, but I don't really predict good things. It seems like Shaft's golden days may have come to an end, and thus there may not be any adaptations of future arcs in Sangatsu no Lion, which is a terrible crying shame because they did such a brilliant job. But you know, at least the manga continues. I recommend everyone to check that out because yeah, this might be our farewell to the powers of Shaft and Shiko Umida teaming up for an anime experience that I think is once in a lifetime. Okay, but it loses out to Eurocamp. Oh my god, I love Eurocamp. Just look at this one screenshot and tell me that this doesn't look like an anime of the year contender. So, as you probably guessed, this is another standard, this time 5-girl, themed slice of life show. The theme this time is camping. Camping. This has led to levels of coziness we'd never before even imagined possible. Camping. Think about how cozy that is. The cooking, the preparation, the kind of intimate isolation, the beautiful natural landscapes, the coziness of settling into a tent for the night with the stars dazzling overhead. It's so brilliant. I'm amazed that this is the first slice of life camping show. I wouldn't be upset if there was hundreds of other slice of life camping shows that followed this. So wonderful the way that they bring out some of the most visceral qualities of camping in a way that I think not only just entices you to go out and see this nature for yourself, but actually kind of imparts that sublime, calm bliss in awe of the hugeness and majesty of nature just through the show itself. It's so immersive, yet so quiet, unassuming. Just watching the show gives me one of the most satisfyingly content feelings I get from watching anime. Oh man, and there's one scene in particular that's probably my favorite scene of anything in 2018, where they're camping out there. There's music playing, and you think it's playing in the OST, like it's just soundtrack music, non-diegetic music that is, that it doesn't take place in the diegesis, the world that the characters are experiencing. Okay, and then in this subtle little trick they reveal that the music you're hearing is actually playing on a little radio that they had brought out to the campsite. And there's just like a slight shift in the audio quality to indicate that. And something about that is just so cozy, so beautiful. I don't even know why. I don't know why it hits me so hard, but that little shift every single time just fills my whole heart. I like it that it subverts, in a lot of the slice of life series, I'd say the main plot structure is round up everybody. That the main character wants to do some sort of activity, so they get a whole bunch of friends together. There's a few episodes that gather in the friends, and then they just set off and do activity with all 5 friends or whatever for the rest of the series. But here, it's actually kind of interesting that a lot of the arcs have the girls apart. That Shimarine goes off on her own. There's like a 2-3 split, and I think that's a nice change of pace. That it's very reflective of the unique qualities of the show to have a solo adventure. To see Shimarine setting off on her Vespa alone, you know, like what other slice of life show would have a plot like that? I think the distance that they create with Shimarine as a character, that she has this sort of autonomy and individualism and such, is really honoring of her as a character. I think already her character archetype is extremely unique and extremely well realized. But the fact that they subvert the traditional structure and plots of a show in this genre just to emphasize who she is as a person, I think is really nicely honoring of that character. Like really, is kind of kind to her to allow herself to be like this. And I found that very charming and moving too, as a huge fan of the character. I think this is the show I'm going to use now to introduce slice of life shows to people. Before it was K-On!, but I think this is actually more approachable than K-On!, and it's more revealing of like the appeal of the genre than K-On!, I think. K-On!, it's like, sure, there's moments that are like really blissful and relaxing, but there's also like a lot of like hyperactivity and stuff that I think sometimes turns people off. Whereas Eurocamp, it'll just put you in that slice of life mode so reliably right from the start. As soon as you see that shot of Mount Fuji and watch Shimarine slowly prepare her campsite in front of it, it's like you get it. Like you get why people might watch this sort of show. In fact, as kind of a proof of this, a friend of my friend wrote this very naive blog post about Yuru Camp. I have no idea how they found out about Yuru Camp, but they watched it, having not really watched any slice of life anime before. And they were so disconnected from the genre that they thought this show was for high school girls. They were like, well, it's a pretty niche audience, but it seems like the show expects high school girls who love camping to be its biggest fans. I was like, no, 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 no. That's not who's watching slice of life shows, but it's so cute that you think that's the case. And it's so wonderful that there's nothing in this show to dispel that illusion. There's no fan service or anything gratuitous and disgusting like that. Um, so I think this is an experience that probably a lot of people can have, and I encourage them to kind of see the appeal of this genre. It's so good that it would join my slice of life pantheon. Okay, and then here, the plan was I would cut. In video editing, I would cut, if you can believe it, to a video I had made showing the slice of life pantheon, all my favorite slice of life shows. And I actually made this. It wasn't quite as good as I like wanted it to be, as I pictured it in my head, but I'm pretty happy with it. And then that would transition into talking about the #1 series within that video, and then it would cut back to me just talking with the slideshow. This is going to be a whole thing. I had it all played out in my head, but like, oh my god, I hate video editing. It's so tedious and it's so much work, and the program lags and the rendering sometimes goes kaput. And I want to do things like add music. That's like the thing that appeals to me the most about editing is being able to make kind of like musical montages and stuff. But then I'll probably get copyright strikes. So it's like, is it even worth it if and nobody ends up seeing the video because it got taken down? It's like, so I went back and forth on this a lot. Like, should I finish making the videos? Should I bother editing it? Should I just go ahead and make it like a normal video? And that's why it's taken like over a year at this point. I don't know. I'd like to show you what I did get done on the video editings because I'm pretty happy with some of them. So maybe I'll post them in the Discord or something like that. Like as a just like a video file or something. So yeah, anyways, pretend there was a cool little animation thing here. And then now, what we're talking about the #1 show of 2018, which is, of course, Bloom Into You. This probably comes as no surprise to people who have watched my channel a lot because I'm a huge, huge fan of the manga. And they would have had to really, really ruin the adaptation for me to put it probably anywhere besides #1 on this list. And it isn't a perfect adaptation. It wasn't like jaw-droppingly transformative and good. The way it might have been had it been like a KyoAni adaptation or something like that. But it was a very good adaptation. I think they and this blew my mind too. In the first episode, I was actually pretty disappointed because the production just seemed quite lazy. The characters felt stiff. It didn't seem like they would really go outside of taking the panels and animating them and actually kind of make a directorial statement. But throughout the show, it seemed like stuff kind of got loosened up. They felt a little more free in how they were adapting it, and how they seemed better at bringing out the personalities of the characters in their animation. Like, when has that ever happened? That the production improved during the course of the show. So by the end, I was quite satisfied by the production quality, and really impressed with some of the little flourishes and minor plot changes they made. And what they did add not just impressed me on the level of like, ooh, that was well done, but that it showed a deep understanding of the series. That they really wanted to appeal to what made the manga so great, what made the manga so popular. Um, Not just like greedily trying to make it more marketable or to wow people, but to further investigate the most kind of intimate and deep emotional connection that people have with the series. That impressed me. Um, and what it did, I think, was bring some of the essential feelings I have about Yuri as a genre into animation. That like the sort of, I don't know, this is going to be a huge subject to get into, but some of the essential feelings I have while reading Yuri, now I can understand what the animation equivalent of those sorts of moments are. Like that to me is so revelatory. That's like a whole new world being forged before my eyes. This is, I think, the first like true Yuri adaptation of the era, and I put major air quotes around true Yuri, of course. That to me is just Yuri series that I like. I guess more specifically, Yuri series that have this sort of emotional depth and a lot of focus on the details of the relationship and the interaction between two really well defined and developed personalities. I also put era in imaginary air quotes. And by era, I mean basically series that have started since I started reading Yuri. Things that I'm not like reaching into the past for, but things that are kind of new to me, coming towards me. Um, so I'm just so happy that they did such a good job of this, and I really really hope they continue. Like that this is just the first of many great Yuri series that will get great adaptations. Speaking of which, um, and here there is going to be another animation. I wanted to make a little anime music video for clips from Kaze-san, and I actually finished this one too. It ended up being like a little unambiguous or unambitious. I wanted it to be like longer and more elaborate at first, but as I said, I just hate video editing. It was taking so long, so I was like, okay, this is good enough. And again, I'll try to make this available somehow so you can see it. But that would have, there would have been stuff. Back to me to talk about Asago to Kaze-san. Morning Glories and Kaze-san. I love it's just bliss. Just bliss. So the manga has been running for quite a while now. There's like 5 volumes, and they just took a little selection from volumes 2 and 3. But I think they marked it out really wonderfully. Some great arcs covered, some great kind of dramatic moments, and then a whole lot of fluffy, comfy, wonderful Yuri life. I really wish they adapt the whole thing. Maybe eventually. They did the short little music video Pony Canyon put out covering the first volume of the manga. And now we have this OVA, which actually has like voice acting and stuff like that, much longer, that covers another kind of volume and a half or so of the manga, I think. But then maybe we'll now have an actual anime series or a theatrical movie even that covers even more. That would be fantastic. I'm not going to hold my breath, but stranger things have happened. The plot lines in this series, specifically that the OVA covers, are largely about insecurity. They're largely about Yamada feeling insecure with her relationship with Kaze-san, really worried that something will jeopardize it, either through like jealousy or self-doubt or whatever. And it's kind of easy to write a plotline like this, because like step 1, like almost nothing happens. Step 2, like Yamada freaks out. Step 3, Kaze-san explains, there's like, they communicate, they realize that there is nothing to be worried about, and Yamada is just full of happiness and relief. And I actually kind of like plot lines like this, though. Even though it is pretty easy and doesn't really require kind of Shakespearean depth of plot, because they emphasize so much the loveliness of the relationship. There isn't actually any incompatibility between the characters. There isn't actually any major trouble or crisis that they have to overcome. And so that when it ends, you're not kind of left with this sense of like, oh, but like, are they actually kind of bad for each other? Did they just kind of get lucky this time? You know what I mean? Like, it's all things that don't actually jeopardize the characters' compatibility with one another. So the perfectness of their relationship is just emphasized again and again and again. And there are plot lines that are kind of more about like circumstantial challenges. Are we going to have to be long distance? How are we going to deal with like these diverging paths in our life? But again, because they're so external, because they're just these kind of like logistical things they have to overcome, sure, we get the emotional depth of them struggling with it and some like kind of character development and growth, but there's never any sort of challenge to the idealness of this pairing itself. That the characters, again, are just still so perfect for one another. I love it. I love it. I love it. And after these crises, there's such a warmth and security on the other side until, of course, the next crises. But well, it's such a relief, such a happy relief when everything works out. The animation actually manages to cover the capture the fluffiness and the charm of the manga. I never ever ever thought this would have been possible. The manga has some of my favorite art in all of manga, let alone Yuri. Just how the characters radiate these beaming smiles, the way the whole world seems to be exploding with charm and love. And I think the OVA does a wonderful job of capturing this in animation, which isn't easy, and is typically the sort of thing that I only thought gigantic studios with basically unlimited budgets like KyoAni would be able to do, but they really knocked it out of the park. Yeah, I never would have guessed that this is possible by anyone but KyoAni, anyone at all. But they did it. But really though, imagine if KyoAni made this show. Oh boy, just imagine. I think it would be kind of like in the Maid Dragon style a little bit. A little cartoony, a little goofy, but with such like coziness, such warmth. Hmm. Speaking of KyoAni, and then here we would have another edited video transition. This one I started working on, but again, I was quite ambitious. And this one I like really couldn't cut it off. Like the idea I had only really worked if I got to like a certain point, a certain amount of content. But I just don't like doing it. It's so tiring and it sucks because I get all these ideas for like edits I want to make and like things I want to stitch together and put together. But I just don't have the skill. I don't have the skill. I don't have the patience. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. And honestly, I think probably the better solution is just to spend my time and energy like making money so that eventually I can hire a video editor to do the stuff I want to do. I think that's like how it ought to work, really. It's just not a skill that I can see myself acquiring. It's so fiddly, so precise, so much based on having the patience to like iterate again and again, looking for the subtle change that kind of makes it click. Um, it's not me. I'm much more the hit record and ramble on for however long I want to type. So this is where the project kind of broke down. I couldn't get this part up to the standards I wanted it to. I didn't want to keep working on it. I kept thinking like, oh, you know, the next time I have free time, I'm sure I'll want to work on it. So I'll just leave it for then. And then got pushed and pushed and pushed, and now it's 2020. We're still talking about 2018 stuff. But I still really do want to talk about it because the thing we're going to talk about next is incredibly near and dear to my heart, which is, as you probably guessed, Liz and the Bluebird. The KyoAni movie following in the footsteps of the Hibike franchise, kind of a side story to Hibike, which was released on Blu-ray in 2018. And yeah, so for some reason, and this reason would be really hard to break down in any sort of conciseness, so we'll just say for some reason, I'm really emotionally enthralled by things that have kind of a sense of understated reservation. Characters that are kind of asocial, a little distant, but then still form meaningful connections through the story. These are often my favorite types of characters, like Shimarin in Yuru Camp, or what the heck? Why can't I think of his name? Reikun. Reikun. What's his last name? What? You know, the main character in Sangatsu no Lion. That's absurd. This is like one of my favorite characters. Kiriyama-kun in Sangatsu no Lion. This kind of warm but distant, like wanting to kind of bridge these gaps but not being quite sure how to do it. Those characters really touch my heart. And this kind of mode that these characters evoke, just sometimes somber, sometimes sentimental, and it's even melancholy sometimes, like sometimes with an actual sadness to it. I think this provides the depth of heart, like the true kind of emotional um, range of some of my favorite slice of life series. And here at last, we have an entire movie length project where that kind of character has the spotlight. That kind of mood that that character imbues is in everything, in every scene, in every directorial choice, in every facet of the animation. And I think it's wonderful that how much this is Mizure's movie. Mizure being the girl in the screenshot I just showed before who plays the oboe. It's her perspective. You can tell every shot is kind of how she's seeing it, or even shots that she's not in. It's kind of Mizure's perspective as if she was there. Her feelings color every aspect of the aesthetic and the directorial mode. This provides, I think, a really amazing contrast with the rest of Hibike, which you realize in watching this. The rest of Hibike is Kumiko's perspective. It's Kumiko's show. It's her feelings, her aesthetic mode, her analysis of everything. And just the way that this movie is completely different from the mode of Hibike, just in the way that Kumiko is a completely different character than Mizure, just shows how amazing KyoAni is at like honoring the trueness of these people. And the fact that this takes place in the universe of Hibike, of course, in the canon of Hibike, overlapping with scenes we've seen depicted in other Hibike movies and such, we're kind of seeing it play out behind the curtain of Mizure's view. That she's not super invested in anything. There's like a lot of people she doesn't even know. But we, as dedicated Hibike fans, can kind of pick up on other relationships playing out, other sources of potential drama kind of brewing in the background. It's really fascinating, and it adds this whole other kind of complexity and dimension to this movie that I think is, like, in one sense, totally unnecessary. Like, I think you can watch this movie and have a fantastic time if you've never seen Hibike and you don't care about Hibike at all. But it's very rewarding if you are a super fan of the series to kind of get these further insights. We're going to talk more about it. The soundtrack, oh my god. It seems to really reflect Mizure's focus, what she's really hearing, the way she kind of processes the audio world around her. You'd hope in a series like this, the music would be good, but I was blown away. I thought it would be kind of like Hibike in terms of musical quality, but it's totally different. It's beyond that in so many ways. There's this minimalist kind of found sound, almost naivist kind of mode that the score operates on, where a lot of the songs are just kind of small atmospheric noises like chairs moving and people kind of tapping on desks, or the sound of footsteps that just kind of build very slowly and delicately into like a little rhythm. And you can imagine that this is Mizure hearing things, hearing the music that's around her. And I was getting super into this sort of music just totally coincidentally right around when this movie came out, that I was listening to a lot of Rei Kokudo, Mahar Shalal Hashbaz, more kind of experimental stuff like Rudolph Ebb. It doesn't matter. But just like realizing that the soundtrack was actually going to play out like this was just miraculous. Like it felt like a blessing that it's like, oh, this is the sort of stuff I've just been getting super into. And here's another excellent example of what I love best about it. And then there's a few like kind of character motifs that are associated with the appearance of particular characters that just nicely get interwoven with all these other sounds. And oh man, the motifs from the titular piece, Liz and the Bluebird, that they're performing as kind of the main plot of the film, and kind of the major climax is of course the big performance scene, as it is in Hibike. But oh man, that performance! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! It's you know that they're gonna go all out for the performance scene, but this one is so different than normal Hibike. The piece is really, really beautiful. I've never loved the oboe flute duet as much as I have here. The way the characters' personalities reflect in the duet is just so beautiful, so expertly done and performed. I always have to give so much credit to KyoAni for making these series about orchestral bands and then hiring a real life orchestral band and real life composers to make new pieces and then hiring bands to play them and not just like perform it once and record it, but having to perform it many, many times for all the different performance scenes in the series, having to perform all sorts of subsets of instruments to reflect different characters practicing and stuff. That's so much work. That's so much effort, and that's so much money going to fund the arts in a way that I think is really beautiful and meaningful. And just thinking about the real life musicians portraying the musical side of these characters and kind of the parallel adventure that they're having learning these same pieces in real life. Oh my god, it's just so wonderful. Like the fact that this is really happening somewhere in Japan. Oh, it's so good. And the music they make is just so gorgeous. The titular piece. Oh man, go out and listen to it. Even if you aren't going to watch the movie, even if you're not going to listen to the whole soundtrack, just listen to that oboe flute duet. So good. It's a definitely 10 out of 10. Cry every time. Masterpiece scene. But, you know, despite this being the big performance climax, it's very different than all of the other big climactic performances in Hibike. There's this sense of restraint. Um, it's not that big Barbara performance, but it's an authentic expression of Mizure and Nozomi, the unique things about them, the way that they're different from like Reina and Kumiko. One more slide on this. And in general, the plot has this sense of reservation that again I find so enchanting and intriguing. Um, it's not kind of this huge spread of someone's life with all sorts of adventures and locations like normal Hibike. But authentically to Mizore, it's just the scope of her world. This is a small spoiler, but I think it's not going to ruin your enjoyment or anything. Every scene in this entire movie takes place in the school. I think that just gives you a good sense, the sense of restraint that it has. Or it takes place in Mizure's imagined scenes of reading the Liz and the Bluebird, the picture book that the music is based on that they're playing. These are really nice, wild and enchanted, colorful, vibrant, free-flowing animation. It's an amazing contrast to this really minimalist aesthetic that the rest of the movie has. And yet it never feels like it goes too far outside Mizure's perspective. It always still feels like how she would imagine that world, how she would characterize Liz and the Bluebird as characters. What character is she focalizing through, though? Which character is she reading as representative of her? I don't know. I don't know. You gotta watch the movie to find out. So there is kind of a twist in this movie, and there's, of course, a major emotional arc and a beautiful relationship that builds and unfolds and develops and blooms between Mizure and Nozomi. I could go on and on and on and on about this. This is the real substantial heart of the movie. But I'll spoil now that Liz and the Bluebird will appear on another list too when I talk about movies I've liked in the past decade. So I'd like to get more into that then. Yeah, we finished 2018 finally. Now it's full steam ahead for 2019, and also the end of the decades lists. And then 2020. We're in 2020. It's actually 2020. So we'll get started on that too. Yeah, it's I don't know. So there haven't been any videos in quite a long time. I'm not going to promise that there'll be a regular flow of videos now. So you might be able to tell I kind of have a cold. My nose is kind of stuffy. It was worse a few days ago. I think it's almost over now. But it's not super pleasant to make videos just physically. And then before that, I just had like so much friggin' stuff going on. So many incidents and crises and nothing super serious. Like, don't get worried. Don't get worried. It's more things happening to other people in my life that I felt very emotionally affected by. And when you're worried about something, when you're stressed out about something, it's very hard to just start recording and snap into, all right, I'm gonna fully appreciate this manga. I'm gonna talk about everything I love about it. I'm gonna give it 110% enthusiasm. I just didn't have the energy. I just didn't have the focus. And I think though now, given that I've made 45-minute video right now and it seems to be going fine, I probably can start making videos again. So it sucks though, because like there's so many things I want to do, there's so many videos I want to make, and now I have a big backlog of manga I want to get caught up on. So it's like hard to know what to prioritize. I guess if you want, let me know in the comments which you would want to see first, what you think I should prioritize. I can't promise I'll like listen to that though. I'm gonna end up just doing what I want. Um, but yeah, I want to make all the 2019 videos. I want to make all the end of the decade videos. I want to make Magic spoiler catch up. I want to play more Pokemon. I want to read all this manga that I've been sitting on. The other thing that's tricky is because of all these ordeals going on in my life, all these things that have been very distracting and occupying for me. I've also not been doing a ton of work for like my actual job. And you know, because I need money to live, that's going to be a major focus that has to kind of take priority for a bit probably. So that's an issue too. So I guess what I'm saying is like I'm back, hooray! Finally a video, but don't get too excited yet. It's probably going to be like at a drip for a bit still. Yeah, yeah, you know, that's how it is. I'm sure if you're a longtime fan of the channel, you're used to these alternating droughts and floods. So eventually we'll get to flood season. I have so many other things I want to do too. Once I kind of catch up on this backlog, so many other videos I want to make, things I want to explore. So I hope you'll join me as we plunge into 2020. It seems kind of weird making this great declaration of newness while talking about things from 2018, but here we are. All right. See you sometime. Bye bye.